Hey everyone! Here is the reason I was in a bit of a hurry to get my backhoe up and running. Well, I don't know when this video is going to be up, but we're filming it right after we fixed the starter on the backhoe, because I had to go and pick up one of these things. Now, I don't know how much this actually weighs, but I'm pretty sure me and my buddy are not going to be able to just lift it down from here. So let's go and get the Ford. Alright, so what is this thing? This is a mobile mixer meant to be put on the back of a tractor, so you can take this out to wherever you need it and mix up a batch of pretty much anything that you could fit in here. They're made by a German company called Moschner, and I believe the original idea was that they could be used for animal feed and stuff like that. But a lot of farmers are also using these to mix up concrete for smaller projects, which this one has clearly been used for as well. So they are made to be set up in a 3-point hitch and then powered by a PTO. So really ideal to be hooked onto the back of a tractor, or as I was thinking, to the front of a Unimog. Although I admit, now that I have it here, it is a little bit bigger than I thought it would be. So from my understanding, there are 3 models of these. There's a small, medium, and a large, and apparently this is the medium model, meaning it will mix up 0.8 cubic meters of stuff. Now, I'm quite confident that the little Unimog is going to be able to spin it just fine. It doesn't really require a whole lot of horsepower, but I am questioning if it's going to be able to pick this up. This whole thing in itself is pretty heavy, and it's also hanging out pretty far from the 3-point hitch. Now, I should just say that you're not really supposed to fill this with concrete and then drive around with it. Normally, you would pick it up, go and set it down where you need it, do all your mixing and pouring, and when you're done, you pick it back up and take it home. So you're not supposed to be driving around with it full of concrete, but it is still quite a lump of weight even when empty. But unfortunately, I don't have the front lift mounted on my Unimog yet, because I'm still not done with hydraulics and all of that stuff. So we can't even test if it will pick it up, although I am pretty sure that it will do it. But what we can do is hook the PTO up and see if it's actually going to be able to spin this, because I still haven't even seen if this will turn. But we're going to need it up a little bit higher to do that, so I'm just going to lift it up and put a couple of pallets under it. Could have been a little bit higher, but I think this is gonna work. Let's see if I have a shaft that'll fit. Aha! We're almost too close now. It'll work. There we go. Well, might want to chain this to something, or it's just going to go flying somewhere. Oh yeah, I just realized we can open this top so we can better see what's going on in here. Oh yeah. That's really heavy. Well, good enough. I don't know if it's gonna turn, so I'll let go of the clutch really slowly and we'll see what happens. Well, this is working just fine. There's just this one little thing that I forgot about, which is that the front PTO on a Unimog, that spins the opposite way of what it does on a normal tractor, which means that this thing is going backwards. But it'll still work just fine in that direction. I just have to turn these mixer arms around so that it'll mix properly. And if you are wondering, the way you get the stuff out that you are mixing is this big hatch out here. It's gonna open a nice big hole in the bottom there. It would be spitting a lot more of that gravel out if it was actually turning the right way. Right, let's shut this off. Well, would you look at that? There's even a holder for it. So I don't really have a use for this thing right now, but I do have some projects in mind where I think this is going to be really handy to have. And also I see them coming up for sale now and then, so I have a pretty good idea of what they cost. But I was able to get this one for less than a third of what they usually sell for in this condition. So that's why we just went out to pick it up. And now that we know that it'll spin and seems to be working just fine, I think it was a pretty good buy. Really the only issues I have found are a few dents and dings and a bent corner down there, and also just some wear on the mixer arms in here. All those little plates at the bottom, those are pretty worn. You can see how the whole right side is all rounded off and practically gone. That should have been looking like the left side there where it's nice and square, so I'm gonna need to cut those off and weld some new ends onto those. And of course turn the arms around so they'll work with the Unimog. But before I can even do that, I'm gonna have to spend some hours just knocking some of all this old concrete off. But overall, it's really not too bad. And if you're wondering why I'm even bothering with something like this, why I don't just get a concrete truck to come out and do this kind of work, it's partly because those concrete trucks, they do get expensive pretty quickly, and also you and preferably a whole team have to be ready when they show up because you are doing that pour there and then. But if I'm doing my own mixing, not only is it going to be significantly cheaper, but also I can do it on my own schedule, even if that is in weekends or holidays or what have you. But this is not the only piece of old steel that I've just bought. There's a few more things I have to go and pick up, so let's go and check those out. So yes, I went and got another one of these old military trailers. Simply because this other one that we picked up a while ago, It's just a little bit too nice. It's still all original and completely intact and undamaged, and it's just gonna go so well with my old Unimog 416 that I just couldn't really get myself to start stealing parts off this one. But then this thing showed up at an auction, and I was able to get this for a pretty reasonable price. And this one I am not going to feel bad about stealing parts from, because it's already missing a lot of stuff. And it's been modified and has a bunch of damage and stuff. This was used by a construction company to haul around some small machines and other stuff. And they used it behind a tractor, so that's why it has this entire extra hitch welded onto it out here. But let's just go ahead and get this thing unloaded, and we can talk a little bit more about it. So the last time we did this, I found out that I don't actually need to put out the ramps to unload one of these things. They have plenty of clearance up under the front here to just drop off the back end of the trailer without hitting it. However, this time we do have something pretty heavy loaded up in there, so it may bounce around a little bit or something, but you know what? Let's just go for it and see what happens. Alright, so first off, this dozer blade, that is not really something I was looking to get. It was just part of the auction lot. It was listed as that trailer with a dozer blade. But honestly, I think they just weren't even bothered to take this thing out of it because it looked like it had been sitting in there for a really long time. So they probably just threw it in on the auction. But anyway, this is also an agricultural thing made to set up in a 3-point hitch of a tractor. And it is a very solid blade. It's definitely not one of those Chinese-built things. Just something like this. That's like a 30mm plate or something. And the blade itself, that's like a 15mm plate or so. This is very hefty. There's some mass in it. And honestly, it doesn't look like it's been used a whole lot. It is ever so slightly rounded off right here in the corners, but other than that, it actually looks like it's in pretty good condition. Seems like you're able to tilt the blade or rotate it. You can take out this bolt and that bolt and rotate it on the center there. Has a few positions to put it in. You can probably spin it all the way around if you want to tow it behind the tractor. I don't see any kind of brand names or manufacturer plates or anything like that, but it certainly doesn't look like it's homemade. You would need one serious press to do something like that. But regardless, I just don't really have much use for this. As long as I have the old Ford over there with the bucket in the front, I can pretty much do with that what I would have been able to do with something like this. So yeah, I'm probably just going to sell this thing, or maybe just forget it and have it sitting here in the corner for a really long time. Who knows? But let's get back to this trailer. So the reason I got this is for the exact same reason that I got that one, which is that I need a set of those wheels. And yes, I could just go and buy a set of wheels, but they are a bit difficult to find and also strangely expensive. Just buying 2 of those would end up costing more than I paid for this thing. Now these are 20-inch wheels and they are 9 inches wide and they have exactly the offset that I need. And also, it just so happens that this center hole and this bolt pattern is exactly the same as it is on the old Unimogs. And I already have 2 of these, so I just needed 2 more. But just taking those wheels off is just going to leave me with this big lump of steel sitting here. So I have a different set of wheels that I'm hoping I can get on here. They are 18-inch wheels and also with a slightly different offset, but I'm hoping they will fit because then I can still use this as a little wagon to go around my own lot here. Now this was not really something I had in mind. At first I just wanted those wheels, but I got to thinking, if I can get another set of wheels on there and still have this as a useful little wagon, if I put this behind the little Unimog, I'm going to have hydraulics available, so if I put a hydraulic ram under that and some hinges on it, I might be able to convert this into a little dumper tipper trailer. That might actually be really handy to have here. But if I do end up trying to do that, I might end up having to make a completely different box for it, or at least modify this a whole lot. Because, first of all, it's just not ideally shaped to be a dumper, but also this wooden floor in here that is just about to fall out, so that's not going to hold a whole lot of weight. But I'm getting way ahead of myself here. First off, let's go ahead and get those wheels off and see if we can get those other wheels to work on this. And also, we could just try and see if the Unimog is even able to hook up to this hitch right here. This is meant for one of those big NATO hooks, so I don't know if it's going to fit in the hitch of the Unimog, but it does have one of the old school hitches, so it might. We'll give it a try. Okay, well, have to get that out, obviously. And I don't know if this is going to work. This thing is pretty thick. Kind of depends on how high that will go. But we'll just give it a try. We'll try it there. Well, that actually worked. Nice. I kind of had my doubts. It did look like this was going to be too thick to fit in there. That's not what she said. But this is going to work just fine. There is a little bit of play in that connection, but that's going to be fine for just something like this. Now, the other problem I have are these two beams that they welded on here. They're not supposed to be there. You can see over on that one, it's just completely open in that triangle. I'm thinking they welded these on to hold the front shovel of a mini excavator. They told me that's what they used this for, so they probably had the excavator up in there with the arm sitting down on the front with the bucket in between those two beams. But this one really gets in the way for this nose wheel out here. I can't lift it up in the correct position. This thing is not running too well either. Anyway, you're supposed to be able to unhook it here and then swing it up and store it in that position, but it can't get all the way up there, so I can only get it partially up like that. That's probably also why this wheel is so mangled, because it's hanging down pretty far when you're driving around like this. So I'm just gonna have to cut this thing off so we can get that all the way up. And I do have another wheel to put on here instead of this bent one. Well, this trailer is actually following that little Unimog just fine. Seems like a pretty good fit. Now, it is leaning forward a little bit. It's kind of weird to tell on this angle I parked at, but I am going to put those slightly smaller wheels on the trailer, so that's going to bring it down a little bit. And also, well, spoiler alert, but that one is going to get one size bigger tires on it, so I think it's going to even out pretty well once we're done. These trailers are actually pretty heavy, so it might test my little jack here a bit, if it will even reach it. Don't think this is going to lift off the ground. No. I just realized I'm an idiot. I have a backhoe. There's no need to do this. I can just lift it up with that. Now that's what I call a floor jack. Look at that accuracy. I'm right in the middle of that rear boom. Actually, that's not really what I was going for, so maybe not so accurate. I kind of wanted to get under it like I am over there because I don't really want it to fall off. But I'm still not gonna crawl around underneath it because it's kind of sketchy just having it hanging on there. But anyway, let's go ahead and swap these wheels. So these are the other wheels that I have for it. They are just a little bit smaller, partly because they are very worn. These are from another Unimog 421, or actually they might be from a 411. I don't quite remember. Mark, if you're watching this, you will know. Anyway, these have an 18-inch wheel on them, but also the offset is going to be a little bit different, so they are going to be closer to the frame. The only thing I'm really concerned about is this brake arm back here. They might hit that, but I don't really know. We'll see. There we go. So it is hitting a little bit, but I can see in the wheel that this scrape here was on the bottom, so it's actually not this arm up here that I was worried about. It's this corner down here, but that's not even terribly important. This is just a square plate. There's nothing back here, so I can just cut that off at an angle and we should be good to go. But that also means I'm gonna crawl around under here anyway, so I am just gonna set up a bit of life insurance. Haha! Success! Nice. Well, just changing those wheels already leveled out that trailer a whole lot relative to the Unimog. It is still tipping forward just a little bit, but if the Unimog becomes just a tiny bit taller, I think these are going to fit together really well. I was just trying to come up with an excuse for why we should drive around with this set down here for a little bit, but honestly, we don't really need an excuse. But now I got to thinking that I'm going to have to put this mixer somewhere, because it certainly can't sit right here. And I thought, you know what, why don't I just put it up into that trailer? Because I don't need either of these things right now, so if I put them on top of each other, it's just going to take up less space. And also, if this is already sitting on some wheels, it's going to be much easier to move this around, because then I can just move it with whatever machine I have available. And that mixer probably weighs like 400 or 500 kilos or something like that. So I thought once I have that up in here, we can take all of this for a drive and see how both this trailer and also the Unimog handles having a little bit of a load on the back. All right, so I already guessed that this thing is pretty heavy, and I know it's kind of far away from the tractor, but this was as close as I could get it. But I have been lifting some pretty heavy stuff out here before, but this time we are a little bit over the limit. This whole thing just lifted off the ground. So yeah, this is not gonna work. I'm gonna have to use the front loader. It's almost like it was made to be up in there. Look at how well that fits. Out here on the sides, there's just a few millimeters of air. I'm gonna go ahead and throw a couple of straps on this so it doesn't bounce around too much, and I guess we'll take this for a little drive down here. See how that goes. I'm kind of surprised this held up at all. I think I mentioned in the start, but the floor of this trailer is pretty rotten. There's practically a hole right through it up here. Alright, so not only did I get a fairly cheap mixer, the wheels I wanted, and a free dozer blade, but also this whole trailer setup actually seems to work really well with this little Unimog. It's handling it just fine. I mean, I can tell it does have to work for it to pull this around, but really that's to be expected with that little engine. But I'm running out of daylight, so I think we'll end it here. Besides, I think we've done enough testing of the Unimog for now. It seems to be working just fine. I did find a few little things I have to attend to, but other than that, I can get back to putting the rest of it together. Now, there wasn't really any rhyme or reason to this video, but I thought you're probably going to see this stuff sitting around in the background, and I figured I may as well show you what it is and tell you why it's here. So I hope that some of you found it interesting, or at least just a bit entertaining. Thank you for watching along, and I'll see you in the next one.